Katy,
Will,
congratulations.
thank you so much.
We're here on the third floor of Waterstones Piccadilly, which is the art department. And my first visual aid is the book I suppose we could describe as being kind of part of the problem, if you like. This is The Story of Art by E.H. Gombrich. The reason why it's a problem is because in its first edition it featured how many women artists?
0.
And in its latest edition...
It's 16th edition, just one. Katy Hessel, the great German expressionist.
But one is not enough in the history of art.
I mean, it's essentially the story of art without women.
Well, which leads me beautifully onto my second visual aid. So here we have your book, and it's a fantastic book for all sorts of reasons. It is, of course, a great corrective to the Gombrich, but it does this thing where it sends you off to find out more about artists. But I wondered, first of all, if I could ask you, what is it that has kept women artists out of that history up until this point?
Well, I think it's exactly that kind of book, isn't it? It's the story of art. What constitutes the story of art? It's essentially the story of art without women. It's who has actually dictated this narrative. Because when we look at so many of the artists and the lives of these women in this book, they were international celebrities in their day. Yet, after their death, maybe after 200 years, they weren't recognised. And it's only really now are they coming to the forefront and being recognised as these headline names and the people they deserve to be.
And what we've done is we've run around and we've grabbed 5 books about women artists that we would like to say more about.
Yes.
And you're going to tell us why they're worth knowing more about. So we start off with...
Artemisia Gentileschi.
Which is exactly what I was going to say. Artemisia Gentileschi, tell me about her and about the period that she was working in and why she's so fantastic.
So she was extraordinary. Like I said, she was an international celebrity in her day. She was around in the 16th century. She was born in 1593 in Rome. And she was a revelation. She got commissions on the scale of men. She said, I open my book with an epigraph saying, "I'll show you what a woman can do," which is a direct quote from her from the 1600s. And she did just that. She had the advantage, like many women artists of the Renaissance and Baroque era, of growing up in a studio. Her father was an artist, so she had training from that. So whilst women were restricted from the life room, which is basically the study of the human form, they weren't admitted to that to the 1890s. She could still copy from plaster casts, from paintings, so she could look at the body in that way. And, by age 17, she was making these towering works, Susanna and the Elders, or Judith beheading Holofernes. But what she did, she really gave voice to women in 17th century Rome. She almost upended these biblical and mythological subjects that were so often depicted by men, but painted them from a female perspective.
We're going to move to a completely different era now. A bit of a jump. We're moving to Lee Krasner.
And abstract expressionism.
And still shrink wrap, so I'm a bit scared.
What?
I don't want to ruin this copy, but tell me about Lee.
Oh, it's a fantastic book. So Lee Krasner, again, just so pioneering, born in 1908 in New York City. And she was really part of the abstract expressionist movement, which was kind of the American avant-garde post-World War II. And this was when the art world shifted from Paris, where Impressionism was, Dada, Surrealism, to New York City. This was the kind of height of the jazz age. But also these artists were coming to terms with what was the role of art post-war. And in a way, because they almost couldn't comprehend the destructiveness of the Second World War, they turned to abstract forms, and that's exactly what Lee Krasner did. And she made these just giant, just momentous, these works full of movement and abstract shapes, and you feel her body in these. And it's, she was someone who was a daughter of immigrants, like so many of the abstract expressionists. Jewish, was born in Brooklyn, travelled an hour from Brooklyn to Manhattan for her schooling. She went to the one school in New York City where they admitted women artists. But, in 1929, when she was 21, she, first of all, was the opening of the Modern, which is MoMA. And actually, can you imagine living in New York, you've never left New York in your whole life, and you're looking at these paintings on a really small scale of the French modernists, they're in black and white, and then suddenly you see these paintings in the flesh, and just that's what we see in this work. I mean, already, this fantastic example of her work on the front cover, these pinks, these oranges, these reds, it was about colour and movement and just going for it.
Okay, so we're going to move to another artist who's featured very recently at Tate.
Yes, Yayoi Kusama. So she actually features in my chapter on abstraction and minimalism, which is quite interesting because she is someone who has, she's still working today. She's in her 90s. She's constantly been at the forefront of art, very much known today for her infinity mirror rims that we see on the front cover. But in the 50s, she arrived in New York City from Japan, where she was from. And in her childhood, she very much had these hallucinogenic visions of all these dots and sort of repetitive motifs, which is what she really channeled into her art. So she came over to the US in the 50s, and she was actually encouraged by her pen pal, Georgia O'Keeffe. And she sort of said this idea of she had mountains of energy stored inside myself, and she just had to get to work. And she was at the forefront of the avant-garde, friends with Warhol, everyone in the 60s and 50s. And what she did was just create these worlds, these sort of meditative, explosive, repetitive forms and motifs. And also she was fiercely political with this anti-war messaging. She pioneered painting, performance art, installation, and she's brilliant.
So we're going to move to a book now. This is an artist who was completely new to me on reading your book.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh
completely new,
gosh.
but I have loved flicking through this book. It's an absolutely gorgeous book, so I'm going to hold it up here.
Yes, yes. So this is Lubaina Hamid's recent Tate catalogue from her exhibition earlier this year. And Lubaina Hamid, forefront of the British Black Arts movement in the 80s. She used to say to people, she used to post out slides to all these kids in art college, like Sonia Boyce, Claudette Johnson, who have now really come to the fore, even though they were absolutely there in the 80s, saying, if you see yourself, if you identify as a black artist, come with me, I'm going to put on some exhibitions. And that's what she did. She was an artist, but she was also an educator. And she was someone who just wanted to tell these hidden histories that had so often been suppressed from art history. And, she did these fantastic, she was trained as a theatre designer, and she did these amazing cutout sculptures. So in the 80s, she did sort of plays on Thatcher's government and everything. But also she puts objects together to kind of show us the hidden histories or the hidden meaning in objects that we so often have dismissed. And despite her being so prominent in the 1980s, it only took until 2017 for her to win the Turner Prize, and she still remains as the only woman of colour individually to win the Turner Prize. So there's still so much work to do.
It's just another frightening statistic.
Yes.
But it's a fantastic book, and we're going to finish off with an artist who may be quite recognisable to people.
Yeah.
But still so enigmatic, weirdly, given that she's sort of the focus of her own art. This is Cindy Sherman. Tell us a bit about Cindy's work.
So Cindy, again, really came to the fore in the 80s. And what she did, she played with performance and the camera. So although we see this woman on the front cover, it is actually Cindy Sherman. She talks about this idea that you can make people believe anything with a camera. And so in the 1980s, she became very famous for her series Untitled Film Stills, which very much kind of evoked the aesthetic of Hitchcock films, but actually are completely invented. And so what she's doing, she's telling us something about this character. So it might actually be quite disturbing. We might think, actually, where is this woman? It's almost as though she captures this snapshot of this dramatic scene that something's happened before and something's about to happen after. But also, this play on this, a woman who is clearly this American sort of wealthy housewife, is probably from her series in 2008, where she plays on all these sort of American subcultures, or just subcultures in general, to kind of make us think again about what we see in these histories, or what, again, it's about upending the narrative that has so often been dictated to us.
So that's 5 women artists that we've highlighted in probably about 5 minutes. There are so many more. Obviously,
it's like speed dating.
Obviously, the most important book in all of these is your book. It opens up a whole new world of art, which is so vivacious, exciting, diverse. I can't thank you enough for this book and for taking the time to tell me a little bit more about some of these artists. Thank you so much, Katy.
Thank you so much, Will.